On the next Discuss This League.
There is a predator on the streets of Gotham City. A predator who's dropping criminals like flies. And the Batman is set up to take the fall.
What do you want?
To find out who's iced the old gang.
It's Batman!
The Joker holds all the cards, but he's not exactly playing with a full deck.
Can't be too careful with all those weirdos around.
When the lines between good and evil begin to blur, Gotham turns against him.
Batman, this is the police. You are under arrest. Stay in the light.
What do you mean you won't? You have to go after him!
He didn't do it. The Batman does not kill.
The Dark Knight stands alone.
You think you know everything about me, don't you?
This madness ends now.
You just don't know when to quit.
Mask of the Phantasm.
Welcome, everyone, to the triumphant return of a series long thought dead, or at least dormant on this on our podcast. But it's back this week. Cal, we are back for another exciting and perhaps the most star-studded edition of Discuss This League to date.
That is right, Liam. This format, we've done it a handful of times thus far. We've tackled a couple of different topics, and usually we have some special guests on. It's essentially a roundtable discussion where typically we throw questions out, we invite some guests on, and they answer them and give their opinions. It's a different format, obviously, than our standard podcast. It's more of, I guess, a traditional podcast like format, just people talking about things. But and so we decided, hey, it's a very special month, as we've talked about all month long, and that, of course, is Aqua Phantasm Month, which means we've been celebrating both the latest and final release in the DC Cinematic Universe, the original one.
We're not specifically celebrating that it's over, but
I think there are plenty of people that are, though. There are plenty of people that are very rabid online.
We're not telling you not to celebrate that it's over either.
Absolutely. You can do what you want. It's a free country. We support freedom here on this podcast. Very controversial stance. But yes, so Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom comes out at the original air date of this episode, or came out just a few days ago. And then we also have the 30th anniversary of Mask of the Phantasm. You, being the brilliant marketer that you are, married the two names together, came up with this beautiful month-long celebration. Last week, we did a re-review and revisited Mask of the Phantasm for its 30th anniversary. We talked about the mistakes we made when we reviewed it originally and some of our scores that we would like to take back but shan't. But Liam, this week's Discuss This League, we decided to throw up the signal and call in the big guns as far as discussing. And we had the opportunity not that long ago to sit down with a guy who's becoming a series regular at this point. He's no longer. I think we're almost prepared to remove the special guest portion of his his title, but we're a correspondent for the program almost, Mr. Kevin Altieri, who just happens to be one of the co-directors of the movie Mask of the Phantasm, and he'll be joining us. But he is not coming alone, as we also had the opportunity, and according to them, for the very first time doing a co-interview together, we also have co-director Mr. Dan Riba, who worked on pretty much everything DCAU related, as we'll talk about during our interview. But with the exception of the Zeta Project, although he does get credited on IMDb as being us. But yeah,
I think we even chat about that for a second.
That is, we definitely do talk about it. So really, we had the opportunity to sit down. We talked about not only Mask of the Phantasm, 30 years later, what it means. We talked to both of these gentlemen about their sort of first time meeting each other, their interactions, working together. They worked together on shows prior to Batman the Animated Series. And then, it's really, really fun because you get to hear them interact with each other, remembering things, sharing stories with us, talking about the voice cast and the late, great Kevin Conroy and the late, great Shirley Walker and the great Andrea Romano's voice casting choices and all of this stuff, the things that we get into, the nitty gritty and the nerdy. We get to all that with these two absolute legends when it comes to the DCAU and DC animation here. So we're very excited to sit down for a very special return and much deserved return of Discuss This League.
Yeah, that's right. Won't take up too much more time here. We're very excited to talk to, as you said, Kevin, who is at this point upgraded to frequent contributor, I believe, and Dan, excited to have him on for the first time. We'll certainly look to get him back on, perhaps to talk about an episode that he directed sometime in the new year. Yes, as you said, Cal, a lot of knowledge to be gleaned about the making of the project, especially when they thought they were making a direct-to-video movie, which suddenly became a theatrical release in the 11th hour. They got a lot of stories about the all the way through the production of this movie as well as the series itself. So without further ado, let us throw it to ourselves from the past as we bring you a conversation, a Discuss This League panel with co-directors of Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Kevin Altieri and Dan Riba. Take it away, us.
Well, welcome everybody to this very special edition of the Discuss This League, our roundtable format that we're here with. And we have two very special, incredible guests based on our topic today, Liam. We are talking about Mask of the Phantasm. Some people have regarded this the best Batman movie ever made in all of cinematic history.
Yeah.
And we're here to discuss it because it's the 30th anniversary this year of this very movie dropping into theaters. We have two very important guests that were a part not only of that creation, but of Batman the Animated Series. It's going to be a great discussion today.
Absolutely. So on our special panel for this discussion of Batman the Animated Series, and as you said, the 30th anniversary, we have first our returning guest, that being friend of the show, Kevin Altieri, director of the series, and of course on the movie as well. Welcome back, Kevin. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me back, and it's a pleasure.
Absolutely. And for the first time joining us is another director on the series, as well as someone who went on to work on Superman, Justice League, Batman Beyond, all of them. Did you do Zeta too, Dan?
No, I did not. IMDb says so, but it is wrong.
Okay. So,
you can't edit those things.
That's right.
I did the pilot episode on, or the one that inspired it on Batman Beyond, and so somebody thought I worked on it. But
okay.
There you go.
And I get credit as the creator of Batman Beyond, by the way.
Oh, well, that's
thanks.
I had nothing to do with it.
No residuals, I'm sure.
I was going to say
just the IMDb credit.
But Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I wore my
love it.
The actual one from the crew, just in honor of you guys.
That you could sell that for a pretty penny these days. They have repros nowadays, but the originals go for a lot of money. That's it's pretty awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit, as we talked about, this 30th anniversary of Phantasm. But to kick things off here, Dan and Kevin, you guys have been doing animation, obviously, upwards of 30, 40 years now. So we want to go way back to the beginning, when it all started. So let's talk about, how did you both meet each other? Like, when was the first time you guys came in contact, prior to Batman the Animated Series?
Well, we actually met at the American Comic Book Company.
Wow. And what is that?
Doug Wildey. It was a comic book shop. It was like that was in Studio City, and it was kind of like I actually had a poster of it when I moved there in 1979 to California.
Wow.
And so it was like someplace I was always trying to see. You know, it was like the American Comic Book Company, and it was like it was a great little shop. You know, great little shop, and they would have signings and stuff. And Doug Wildey of Johnny Quest fame, did a signing there. And pretty much, I remember there was not many people who even knew this was going on. and it was me and Dan talking to Doug Wildey. And I think, Dan, you had worked with Doug Wildey a little bit?
I worked with him at Ruby Spears, and Doug was scared that no one would show up. He was always scared of this. So he was like, Dan, I'm doing this signing. You got to be there. You got to be there. So I'm like, well, I would have been there anyway, Doug, but but because he asked me, I had to be there.
That's awesome. Yeah. So we and we were just like talking to Doug Wildey and just, it was like two Johnny Quest acolytes, pumping him for information.
That's awesome.
And that was, and then flash forward, like I was working in live action, like I was working with Dave Allen, doing special effects stuff, stop motion effects for movies like Robot Jocks and The Stuff. And I was actually was doing storyboards for animated sequences for this movie that was being produced by Ray Harryhausen, but he wasn't going to do the animation. Force the Trojan. So I had all these storyboards. And then because I was such a fan of Inspector Gadget and of Japanese animation in general, that I heard about this studio, Deke, that was opening up in Studio City, right down the street from American Comic Book Company, by the way.
Wow.
And I walk into the door, and it was like a shop front that they had taken over. It was not an animation studio. It was like an empty shop front. And there's like three guys in there huddled around a desk. They hadn't moved in any furniture or anything yet. And I go in there and I say, I walk in, knock on the door. It's like, hey, is this Deke? And they go, yeah, this is Deke. Is that a portfolio you got there? And it's like, yeah, you guys hiring? Well, yeah, let's see. What do you do? Storyboards? Okay. And I showed them my Ray Harryhausen, Dave Allen storyboards. And they said, oh, when can you start? And they tried to give me a script right then and there.
Wow.
It was Rudy Zamora was the producer, and they hired me on the spot. And then like about a week later, they hired Dan.
Wow.
Maybe 2 weeks later. What do you
Maybe
think?
a little later, because I was Kid Video.
It was on Kid Video.
Kid Video, yeah. And then you look familiar, and then and so I saw like a portfolio, some storyboards from Ruby Spears that I'd done, and a sketchbook, and the sketchbook was the thing that caught your eye, and you're like, and I was like copying Al Williamson hands and stuff like that and poses, and he's like, oh, you can draw hands, okay, that's hard, okay, get this guy, and then we like, wait, don't I know you from somewhere? And then we remembered the Doug Wildey thing. Wow. We'd spent like an entire afternoon together.
That's crazy.
Yeah. No, and then the thing is like during Deke, if you guys, Dan and I were like, we're from the same generation, so like we both knew, and we're both Astro Boy fans, Gigantor fans, and the 80s in Hollywood at that time, with like the Dickies doing Gigantor, like we'd go to all the concerts and shit, and we were running around Hollywood like an idiot, Well, I was the idiot, but but anyway, but the thing is like we also had like collections, and like especially when I would get sent over to Japan, I think I got sent over first. Dan spent more time in Japan, but I didn't even know who Miyazaki was. I just had these film books.
Yeah, same here.
And, yeah, it's like we didn't know who he was, and it's like, and then you go to Japan, and it's like, we're bringing all this stuff back.
Yeah,
and we bonded with like the Japanese directors. They really liked me and Dan.
Yeah,
because we
Hirakawa in particular.
Yeah, Hirakawa-san especially.
He was wonderful.
Yeah, and we learned Japanese style.
Yeah,
we did storyboards Japanese style, so they really liked us. And
come into play a little bit later too.
What was funny too was like I'd gone to the World Science Fiction Convention and saw the movie Lensman, and I bought some books of that film, and they were like comic books made of frames of film, and and Hirakawa directed the computer animation. It was the first CG integrated CG film, with animation, and he directed the CG stuff. So we're in a meeting where we're meeting him, and I'm like, I see. Wait, they mentioned Lensman, and I brought the book out and had his picture on it. I was like, oh my God, I'm working with this guy. It was amazing, and then became very good friends with him. It was wild.
That's incredible.
And then we would on our collections. I remember at one San Diego con, I actually picked up this beat up, it wasn't beat up. It was the only VHS copy you could get of a decent print of Superman, the Fleischer Brothers Superman.
Oh yeah,
the Fleischer.
And we just, we would just watch that thing over and over, and just look at the techniques and stuff, and notice that Miyazaki is using those techniques too.
Absolutely. I mean, and plots too, and giant robots.
And so it's and so we're and Brad was another one that was they were just, Deke was trying to just get people to just crap it out and stuff. Mm-hmm. And me and Dan are going to Brad, no, we're doing it fast, but it doesn't have to be crap.
Exactly.
And when we're doing stuff like Real Ghostbusters, we're starting to get more into that action adventure stuff that we really wanted to do. Mm-hmm. But we're always doing Saturday morning. I did Jason the Wheeled Warriors and what is it? You name all the Deke shows, Cops.
Yeah.
We're trying to do action adventure. And it's and then there was Starcom.
Yeah.
Where I remember you couldn't get a storyboard artist to save your goddamn life to do action adventure or to just look, they're just sitting in a cockpit in outer space. Can't you get this right? And it's no. So 90% of the time, those shows, and Alf was another one, and Alf Tales, where Dan, I just remember Dan, I gotta stay late. Can you stay late too? And Dan's yeah, I'll stay late. We're in the same room, and I'm drawing and handing it over, and Dan's inking it, and then he hands me something, and I ink it, and it's we're just
man.
I remember we did a whole entire acts overnight. On Starcom, was it the Trojan Crowbar?
Right.
We actually did an entire act overnight, and I did the whole first act solo. And I thought I was done. And then the guy hands in this horrifying piece of crap. And we were up to 4 a.m, and we did it.
Yeah.
The deadlines you couldn't miss. You couldn't miss. Right. Stuff was going on here. And anyway, so flash forward to Bruce actually worked on Cops briefly. Don't you remember, Dan?
Oh, yeah.
Peter Chung was doing the character designs. And then all of a sudden, there's this long-haired kid who hands in these character designs and man, this is the style of the show. And then Peter's no, my style is the style of the show. Oh. But I did get to tell Bruce how much I really liked.
Yeah.
His designs. They were actually really exactly what the show kind of needed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And then when he came in on Beanie and Cecil, I would actually take a break from working on Alf and watch him board. Because it was it was like watching Wally Wood coming in, and these things were extraordinarily beautiful. Wow. And you're just how does this happen? You're it's I do this. I don't know how this happens from this guy, because it was they were little comic books, and it was wow, this is insane. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
So we have the introduction to Bruce for you guys. He's coming in and working.
Yeah.
Sort of this.
And then I leave Deke just because they made it so impossible for me. It's they kept cutting the budgets, and I'm I'm out of here. And I worked at Disney Feature on Lion King and Treasure Planet and some other stuff in development. And then I was doing comic books for TSR. And then I get a phone call from Bruce, and they're going to do a Batman. And I'm the Tiny Toons guys are going to do Batman. This is going to be,
right.
But I go in there and I see, and Dan was at TMS at the time.
Yeah,
you know, and
they're developing Little Nemo and Slumberland as a TV series.
Wow.
And so I heard that got canceled for whatever reasons, you know. I mean, but the TMS was kind of flighty back in those days. But so I'm sitting there, and for the very first time, you know, I'm sitting there. I go in, and I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll have a job, maybe I won't. But then Bruce showed me that trailer that they made, you know, and I go, oh my God, are you kidding me? And it's like immediately I call up Dan. Like, you got to see this. And Dan's like, I already saw it. Sign me up.
I don't know how. I think Paul Wee had gotten a copy of it from somebody, and it had circulated around. And so I got a bootleg of that thing, and it was already like a copy off a copy off a copy off a copy. And I got this like 7th generation version, but it was extraordinary.
Wow.
And so when Kevin gave me the call, I was like, what? That?
I was gonna say.
Yes.
That's an incredible call to receive. Wow.
So another name you mentioned brief in passing, I think, was Brad Rader. Was Brad brought in by the two of you then, or was he recruited separately?
Brad was kind of hired exactly the same time as me.
Okay.
But we were communicating. I don't remember what made Brad might have been hired first.
Mm-hmm.
I was the first director that they hired, but
Brad,
you know, I think was the first board artist. And then, you know, basically, you know, we brought in like for my crew, it was like the Deke team, and then we got Mike Gogan,
right?
You know,
God, James.
You know, and it's like, and Mike was a character designer, but I was like a little bit leery because, you know, I knew him as a character designer. He says, "No, I want to do boards. And he says, and promise me that I'm not going to do any character designs. And I said, that's right, Mike. You won't be doing any character designs. He did all the best character designs.
He did.
Of course.
Randa Dwayne was that Marilyn Monroe robot.
Oh, yes.
And usually, like, Bruce does the girls, but in this case, Mike did that one.
Wow.
And all the turns and all that stuff. I mean, Bruce might have done like a rough for him to follow, but he did all the turns and attitudes and all. It was extraordinary.
Wow. Yeah, that was for my crew though,
and it's for you. and he did all the attitudes and stuff for Clayface. I mean, Bruce obviously designed this stuff, but he kind of had a loose thing. And I don't think Bruce did any of the attitudes. I think that was all Mike. Mike did all that stuff. Bruce colored did. He wanted a certain how to ink it. He wanted to know how to do the shading, but
it was me, Brad, and Mike doing the Clayface Feet of Clay, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Like what the script didn't give us anything. It's like the script has him. Well, he's mimicking this guy. Oh, he's a desk now. Oh, this desk comes alive. It's like, no, weapons, axes, maces. We're sitting there trying to figure out as we boarded what Clayface did, and then Mike took that and created the poses that we needed for exactly that.
Wow.
And then the animation studios too were ones that we had been working with in the past.
Right.
Yeah, that one was like TMS just took stuff that was great and made it classic, phenomenal, unbelievably great.
Yeah.
Whenever we get to review a TMS episode, it's like
okay, we know.
We know this is going to be a masterpiece. Like
I did like all of the character designs of Matt Hagen's roles. Brad was roughing a bunch of them out because there were so many different things. I was like, holy cow! So it's like and you did some, and Brad did like roughs, and I was cleaning up and adding to, and the doughboy, and the this and the that, and the pirate guy, and it's like, but man. But then when they just amalgamated everything, I did the Nosferatu, I think.
Yes, you did.
Oh, really? That's good.
Yeah.
That last sequence goes down as one of the best.
But then they just plussed it with that and it's in the board, but they just made it freaking like really.
Yeah, because I remember when I got that, I was supposed to be doing some other thing, and then Bruce comes in with the script for Feet of Clay, and he's like, yeah, it's like this, what do you think? And it's like I was supposed to get ACOM.
Ooh.
And I read the
part
script.
One, right?
Like,
they did part one.
Yeah, they did part 1, and I was like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I know. We're gonna have to pull some strings here."
ACOM is notorious on our show. They were infamous. They were awful.
They were another group that we worked with at Deke.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those animation studios except for Jade. I think we're all ones that we worked with.
Yeah.
So the connection was already there.
Right.
Yes.
And,
Spectrum was one that.
That was Fukuda.
Right.
Who did was the TMS connection with Deke.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and Ken Doer.
Yeah.
We had known Ken Doer since he was a production assistant. And, and he's like, fluent English, Japanese, and
that helps.
So that's how he became the producer over at, without him, I don't know what we would have done.
Oh, man. Holy cow. I don't know.
So it's all those connections. Nan Lighting, too. She's
right.
a manager. And I knew her from when she was a PA.
Right. By the way, going back to Deke and the Japanese directors and the Fleischers, so I was really cautious about showing this stuff to these guys, and they were like, no, we want this. We don't see these in Japan. So I ran the whole bunch, including the Japateurs and all the other ones, and they were like, oh boy, and they loved it. They loved it. And this is including like Osamu Dezaki, he was like the guy who directed Cobra, Gogol 13. I'm like, I had him in my apartment. I was like, oh my gosh.
Wow. That's incredible.
It was pretty cool. It was a good day.
So we see the connection. You guys are a big family starting from, it's all these little connections. You made connections earlier on in your careers prior to Batman. But really you guys started working together, I assume almost immediately on the show, right? So what was the first time what was the first episode that you guys remember working on together?
Oh, you mean in Batman?
Yeah.
On Leather Wings.
Yeah.
The very first one that was done.
Very first one.
Yeah.
The pilot.
Yeah.
So you guys started off on a high note. I mean, it's legendary. Yeah. It's legendarily one of the. It's the thing that brought everybody into this world. It gave them the sense that this was not the Adam West version of Batman. This is not even the. It's not even the Michael Keaton version of Batman. It's its own sort of storytelling devices. Visually, it's very different than anything else that had been seen since the 70s or the roots of the character itself. But so you guys really got to kick things off there and really. Get started right away with a bang.
My first assignment was to help design Man-Bat, and I blew it. But but I insisted that his hand be wings because as much as I love Neil Adams, I think he's a genius. I thought his work was fantastic. It always bothered me that the wings just like come out of the wrists in a really weird, unnatural. It just seemed like, well, now it's a cartoon. It doesn't have any basis in science, and so it's like, so we made the wings like hand thing, and I kind of like made it work so that he had some fingers that he could still. And Bruce was like, okay, all right, fine. He signed off on that, and we kind of like I tried to work it and make it big a monster thing, but then Mike Kim came along and really like he nailed it. It was a great design.
Yeah.
So that way I'll share it with you.
Yeah, if you look at my storyboards of the sequences where Man-Bat transforms and stuff, the design I was working off of was Dan's.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
he has eyes.
Yeah, so he has eyeballs.
Oh, very interesting. Ah, okay.
So they dropped it. It's like, so it was like, but it's like, so they didn't have to change the board because the design that Mike Kim came up with follows what Dan was doing.
Yeah. Proportionately, they gave him kind of Popeye arms to justify the strength for the wing. It was great. It was really cool.
Made a lot of sense.
I actually, that was the main collaboration I did on the show was help you. I cleaned up some of the board, just a little bit around that area. So that was kind of fun because I remember doing the scene right after the transformation. That was all you. But then when he like picks up the desk and throws it at Batman and then goes out the window, I think I helped clean some of that up. which was, I think, I might have done the look, the pathetic look at Francine. I might have come.
That's that little moment. Yeah,
like that was Kevin's board. I'm cleaning up. I can't take credit. No, collaboration. That's all.
No, but we were doing what we always did. We were handing back and forth.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that along with everything else on the series clearly is a masterpiece.
Right. And speaking of masterpieces, as mentioned at the top, we're kind of looking forward at the Batman Mask of the Phantasm 30th anniversary coming out this year, amazingly. And tell us your guys' memories of just like when that project is first mentioned. And I know the legend is like it was supposed to be just direct to video, and then it very late in the game got switched. Is that accurate?
Very much.
Yeah. No, we had they called us in. They were talking about we're going to do a direct to video. I think only Disney was doing direct to videos at that time,
right?
And but their Saturday morning stuff at that time, like Gummy Bears and stuff, was really high quality. But I think Warner Brothers was looking to get in on that. I think they were planning on doing Tiny Toons, but they wanted to do a standalone thing. And I remember we had a meeting where everyone came in there where we were talking because we had finished the the first season, right, Dan?
Yeah, we had finished the first season.
Yeah,
and this was going to be like maybe like we're probably going to get a pickup, but we don't know. And in the interim, let's do this video. So some way to keep the crew working.
Right.
Crew together. And that was Gene McCurdy and I think Tom Ruger. Like they were championing that idea. So basically, we're going to keep all the crews together, and each one's going to have a section. And I remember we had this meeting where Paul Dini had a great idea, kind of a Harley Quinn Joker one, and then I remember Marty Pasco talking about a character whose eyeballs were on the ends of his fingers.
Ten-eyed man, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, that's not, and it's like, and Michael Reeves had an idea.
But
yeah. And we're all going to work on it.
Alan couldn't stop laughing when the 10-eyed man. I mean, and Marty kind of hated that because I mean, every time it was mentioned, he would giggle and it's like, I see you. It was just like, I just couldn't picture. So what? Batman throws a cactus at him and he's out. It's like, what? How is that a power?
Yeah. And then Alan Burnett. I think he was just entertaining everyone. And honest to God, the Paul Dini script was really good. That actually became one of the Batman adventures.
Okay.
Which has the Return of Grace, and it was a sequel to Two-Face.
Right. Okay.
This is where Two-Face is in jail, stuck with the Joker. Anyway, so that became a Batman Adventures comic book. I think that Ty Templeton drew. I'm not sure.
Yep.
But anyway, but then. Alan Burnett pitches us his love story, his Batman Year One, his Joker origin. And I'm like, this is better than the Bill Finger, Bob Kane Joker or Jerry Robinson Joker origin.
Right.
This is better than, it's like it's better than any origin. It's like it makes the Tim Burton one look stupid. Because it's so logical. And I'm not saying the Tim Burton movie is. See, the thing I'll say about the Tim Burton Batman, even though I don't agree with a lot of the things, the takes he does, it's not a Batman movie. It's a Tim Burton film.
Sure.
It's its own thing. And Tim Burton does Tim Burton.
Absolutely.
So, but just this origin of the Joker, where the Joker, in flashback, we see how he's connected to the mob, and he's an assassin for the mob. He's a gunsel. And so when whatever the Red Hood thing happens to him and he becomes the Joker, well, of course he's going to become a mob boss and want to just take over the town.
Right.
Because that's what he does. He's part of it.
Right.
So I thought that was actually really good. And then when I found out that the Joker's going to be in it, I only got to do one Joker and it was with Tim Curry, and that's like, it was really great. I got to meet Tim Curry. And,
oh, very cool.
So you did the last laugh? Was it the last laugh?
Yeah, he did the last laugh, and I think in Christmas with the Joker, and then after that he was whatever happened. He, you know, I think he had to do a show in New York or something, so he got removed. And Mark Hamill took over, and I'm like, I haven't. It's like every time the Joker and then Harley shows up, I don't get it. You know? So I go, okay, and I walk into Bruce and Eric and Alan Burnett, and I go, do me a favor. I want to, number one, I want to meet Mark Hamill. And number two, I want to do the Joker. So give me the Joker stuff. Please. You know, sequence record. And I'm like, I apologize to Dan. Because he's the director now. He's not on my crew. He's his own crew. He's got his own crew. Yeah, well, I recommended him right off the bat because Dan was like,
yeah, I had directed at Deke, but I was apprehensive about directing on Batman because I knew it was going to be I knew it was going to be a big deal, and I was getting ready to get married. I just thought, look, I'll do what I do because I direct here. I won't have a life, and I didn't. I was right.
But so on the Mask of the Phantasm, my sequences, and I really had to do the boards myself because I really wanted to.
Yeah.
And just like all the Joker sequences, including the flashbacks, where he's a thug. It's like, and it was me and Mike Gogan and Brad
and Brad, yeah, because I think Brad did the Joker in the dilapidated. He did some of that stuff with the
World Fair
Valestra.
With Hazel.
The Hazel stuff. Yeah. And then you did the climax, the fight at the end that was just so marvelous. Yeah. And Mike did the hospital scene with the office scene and the hospital scene with oh my gosh, the council guy,
Reeves, Arthur Reeves,
Arthur Reeves, Arturo.
And I got to for the recording of that. It was like, Hart Bachner. He's like, I'm sitting there, and it's like there's something, just this oily, thing he has with his voice that he was doing that was like really cool. And then just I had to slap my hand. I'm in the booth, I'm not, but he's sitting there, and then you describe what's going on, and you go and say, okay, he's like laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. And I don't remember there being a cut because he's like doing that, and they're like, now control yourself, counselor. Like, okay. And then I said, and then it's like you just described to him what's going to happen. He said, and then you look over at the window and Batman's coming in. And just that voice that he has is like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's like, that wasn't in the script.
Yeah.
It
wasn't in the script? Wow.
No, the oh no wasn't in there. That was just.
Oh my gosh. That's so great. Now, Dale, what part?
And what's funny is, by the way, he's the son of the mayor. That's
Lloyd.
That's Lloyd Bachner's kid.
I don't.
So it's kind of neat.
I didn't.
The politics. It was like he's a councilman and his dad's the.
That's too funny. That's too funny. What did Dan? What were the sequences that you remember specifically? We know Kevin jumped in front and said, "Give me the Joker." Were there?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't do any of that. So I just
no politicking. You were just like, "Give me whatever."
No. And I mean, I know I because I did a lot of like Jeepers. There is the oh my gosh, my characters' names. The first sequence in the cemetery. That I did that.
Chucky Saul.
Not Chucky Saul. It was the grave of Chucky Saul, because Bruce did the Buzz Bronski.
Buzz.
Yeah.
But Doug Murphy boarded that. I did I think I did the party scene. I boarded the scene where Bruce Wayne takes the red pencil and he makes the little smile on the picture. That's the stuff that was what I remember boarding. I did the crowd scene where the councilman is ranting and raving in front of the press.
Okay.
And then the chase. I did a lot of the chase stuff you did
the rooftop stuff.
The rooftop stuff. And,
Phantasm
and also the thing I Kurt boarded thing, but we did some tweaks on it. The binocular shot.
Oh, yes.
And what was funny about that was that we were trying to make this read that he was reading their lips. It wasn't quite playing, and there's a shot that Bruce thumbnailed, and we kind of realized we got it from 2001, where we go through the window and we see Batman with the binoculars, and you pull back to see Arthur and Andrea's talking, and you can so he's like, it's clear that he's reading their lips, and that was a shot right out of 2001 with it's like Hal is like through the little window and he's reading Bowman their lips talking, and then so we were like, oh, we ripped off 2001, that's cool. And then flash forward like 30 years later, I'm talking to Gary Lockwood and he's talking about working with Kubrick, and he's like, yeah, I did this. The one thing that was Kubrick was really great with like input. I could suggest something, and we couldn't nail this thing about how Hal could figure out whether. So I kind of came up with this idea about him reading their lips, and I'm like, "Get you off!"
Oh man, that's great. Oh man, that must have been pretty funny. I love that.
So I know you guys you're credited as sequence directors, I think is the official term, and then Bruce and Eric are credited. Eric Radowski and Bruce Timm are credited as the directors. So what was that process like? So are you kind of doing your individual sections, and then they're kind of just spinning all the things at once, or how does that work exactly?
That happened. The credits actually were done originally. And it was supposed to be, there's executive producers, and then it's produced by Eric and Bruce.
Okay.
And then we were directors.
Right.
Just the same as it is on the series.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are executives like Bob Kane, I think, Michael Uslan, people who are just attached, like Stan Lee's, it's like executive producer Stan Lee. It's like, as if Stan Lee had anything to do with it. But so they kind of got bumped down, so they had to be executive producers because they were attached to all the DC properties, and then everyone the executive producers became producers, and then Bruce and Eric became directors, and then we became sequence directors. But it's basically the same job that we always had.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any difference that you remember because it was, even though it was originally direct-to-video was the plan, was there any difference in budget that you guys could do more, or was it working with the same budget, same style that you remember?
Same period, same time period, same budget and everything.
Yeah. But the difference is aspect ratio. Yeah. When we found out, we're like, oh my gosh. So some of the boards had to be reworked so that the compositions would work better for a widescreen. Mm-hmm. But it didn't really affect because we were already very cinematically minded. So it really didn't affect that much because the boards were really good. So it wasn't that tough. But the main thing is, and you can see it almost like Bruce did it all in the very first sequence. Mm-hmm. All of the BS&P rules that just broken right there.
Broken glass.
We weren't allowed to show a fist connect with a face. All those things were like camera shots with the flashes or kicks to the chest. Yep. All of that stuff. He made a point of let's get this fist right in a jaw. Let's have him break a lot of glass.
Joker's losing teeth and bleeding.
It's just almost violated in that first shot. It's I don't think he put any child endangerment in there. There wasn't even nudity, but there was a pretty salacious poster in that room that gets knocked over. Yeah, so it's even that was a little more than we would have been allowed, on the show. So it's the Shady Lady Casino. We couldn't have done that on Saturday morning.
I got to knock the Joker's tooth out.
Batman and him are both bleeding in that final sequence. You didn't have to worry about the blood The blood.
And you guys never saw, like, I really wish that they kept an original print, because the original print was like about 5 minutes longer.
Wow.
And for my sequences, there was a lot more blood.
Doesn't Batman get stabbed with the top of the Empire State Building too? Like,
the original board I did, the Joker actually stabs Batman through the shoulder.
Whew.
And then the Batman, like, he kicks him, knocks his tooth out, and then he stands up and pulls the spike from the Chrysler Building out of it.
Gosh.
And then he says, "Joker."
Man.
And there's like a pan of Batman. There's like a pool of blood under him. And
yeah, that was animated.
Yeah,
the big pool of blood, and like Warner Brothers is like, that's too much. and the auto gyros, there was like about a minute more of them just cutting him up.
Yeah,
there was a lot more. And for me, like, as far as like the new format when they did that, the only thing I think I had to do, and I remember doing, was like, I went, oh boy, I get to do the miniature city more. So I made those compositions work better.
Right.
That actually, having the new format, because originally it's pretty much a square.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when we got the larger format, that was one thing that I went back. I remember doing that, like, because the shots of the city, those are all straight off the board.
Wow.
Yeah, the backgrounds were made straight off the board, including the little WB on the building.
Yeah, I know. Yes. That was hilarious.
And it gets a laugh every time.
Yes.
Every time I see it with a live audience, it's like it gets a laugh.
There you go. What I love about that sequence is it's like the inverse of all the Dick Sprang stuff, where Batman is with giant, working with giant props. But in this case, it's now giant Batman with tiny city.
Yeah, Joker and Batman are the kaiju now.
Dick Sprang.
Yeah.
Wow.
The script was, I think it was written by Michael Reeves, and he was pissed off at me because he went like, everything's big, they're on giant typewriters, they're doing this, they're doing that, and they're jumping on these big tires and big this and big that. And I said, no, they're Godzilla and King Kong in the miniature city of the future.
And the thing is that is a thing that actually existed in both World's Fairs. There was that miniature city thing. It's real. These World Fairs actually had them. So, like, Kevin's drawing from that, and also the idea of the Joker wearing the Chrysler Building. That's actually an old thing too. The people dressing as buildings. There was actually a fashion show of like this from the 30s of guys dressed as buildings. It's really goofy. So actually, that's even based on something real. Wow. So it's all like it's informed. There's an inspiration. Reality actually, like, And
I didn't tell anyone that I was doing the Joker. Just the Joker, he's doing, costume change is what he does.
Right.
And I just had him wearing the Chrysler Building on top of the
like, the windows and the eyes.
He's like,
it's like the classic, say that behind a painting, but it's like it's a building. It's so funny.
We're sitting there in the editing bay, and we're sitting there. And I'm watching. We're editing, trimming this and that, the shots, and they're calling retakes. And they called a retake, and I'm like, I go, what retake? And it's like, well, look, the building's moving. I said, just go to the next scene, and they're like, oh, like that's not a mistake.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
But that's the thing. It's like because it is such an absurd and funny thing that the Joker still has a sense of humor, even this dark weirdness that there's like something, tweaked and weird and insane about it, but it's still funny. Like him either grabbing the cleaver or the bologna and hitting her with the bologna instead is like, oh, it's so brilliant.
You'll notice his hand he does hit the cleaver.
Right. He has the chance. He's like, this would be funnier.
He's like, no.
It's got to be the baloney. It's like, I can't. If it's not funny, it's not worth doing.
Exactly.
Oh man, so good.
No, and also there's like one of the things that got cut from the storyboard. Mm-hmm. How they have the the jetpack sequence, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll both die. And it's like, whatever it takes. And he yanks them and they both go down and they smash into the globe.
Mm-hmm.
They don't smash through originally.
Oh.
They land inside.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And Batman's messed up. The Joker's laying there. His thing is starting to, the jetpack is starting to burn.
Mm-hmm.
So Batman, just crawls over to the Joker, undoes the backpack, and like drags him out, and he smashes a way out. And as he's dragging the Joker to safety, the Joker's like, for once I'm stuck without a punchline. But at the time it had to, so they reboarded just that one moment and got him back outside.
Really?
And of course the other thing is now I had him laying there just trying to, hang on to consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And the Joker's like, looks at him and he's like, he just looks at him with absolute love and pulls a knife out. And he starts crawling towards Batman. And they're like, no. Just Andrea shows up. Just no, that's too much.
Now, Dan, I got a question for you. We've had Kevin on the show. He has declared, in his opinion, and this is an opportunity for you to agree or disagree. You guys can hash it out right here. He has declared that Talia al Ghul is Bruce's one true love. Do you agree with that? Or having been working on this movie, Andrea really was kind of projected as maybe his first love. Yeah. But do you have an opinion on who Batman's one true love is, especially this version?
Well,
Now, before you answer, Dan,
yeah,
I want to say, remember everyone out there in DCAU land, that Mask of the Phantasm, number one, it flashes back to Batman Year One.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's basically the animated series Year One, but the whole movie is pre-Batman the Animated Series.
Right.
Exactly.
This is before Dick Grayson. This is before Robin's Reckoning.
Exactly.
So all of that. So
exactly
is like, it's like Bruce Wayne when he falls in love with Andrea and goes through all the angst and all that stuff.
This is all before.
He's in his 20s.
Yeah, exactly.
He's 23, 24, maybe. Maybe 23, 24.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne Corporation isn't like the big thing.
No, they're taking that into account. Absolutely. Then Talia would probably, because she came along later, and it's like, and we never really played up a romance between him and Selina the way that's done in the comics. That's not really a thing for us. That's just So Talia would be it. Yeah, I would imagine so. I can't really. I think I kind of agree.
Because ESPN style sports fight here, where you guys are yelling over each other as to who the real Batman's love is. It's just a straight.
But Bruce Wayne. The thing is, Bruce Wayne has girlfriends.
Mm-hmm.
He does keep up the Playboy front
for sure.
And that continues, because you'll see in Two-Face Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
When he's at Harvey Dent's, he's chatting up this girl, until he sees Harvey going off to meet with Thorne, and he's like, hang on a second. And she's like, oh. And Harley's hitting on him, and Harley's holiday.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Something about that chin. Hey, I know you. You're Bruce Wayne, the boy. Unattached, I see.
That's right.
And Veronica Vreeland is a girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But they're not an item.
No, in fact, she
takes them out shopping and
tries to get him out of that brown suit.
She throws a drink on him at that party.
That's right.
So it's like, well, she's she was a girlfriend, clearly.
Right.
But then there's Talia, and Talia is the only one that and they do do go on. I mean, it's like, even in the comics, it's like, actually, if you saw the ones that I'm really mad at Alan Burnett and Paul, by the way. How dare you do such a good comic book and hire Ty Templeton? Because the present, just for everyone out there, it's like the comic's really good.
Yeah,
and I really enjoyed the new angle on Rachel
really
and Talia.
Yeah, they've been fantastic, and they are continuing the romance. I think we've even had some basis speculation as to where that goes as they're beginning to wrap that up.
Yeah.
But
no, and in that comic, it's just like, Talia is like, well, my father and I, why are you here when we're on, then I'm taking one of my very few times off. And it's like, what are you here? Well, we own the island. So, and it's like, my father expects you at dinner, and like, so they have dinner and they're doing this. And then there's just a scene where Talia's under sheets and Bruce is wearing boxer shorts. So
what is that?
What they do. It's what they do when they get together. They're a couple.
There you go.
They've got chemistry. There's no other character in the universe that he has that kind of chemistry with.
Right. In your and even further in your defense, if you're going into the main continuity, there's only one person that Bruce has had a kid with, and it's Talia.
Yeah, so. Exactly. I was going to say that. I mean, they really made a point of like, it just makes that was the whole point anyway. that's what Raish wanted, an heir.
Yep, right.
And it's like. So he's got him in Damien, he's got this,
Yep.
Yeah, and Arcadie's just like a mumbling, crumbling old man, so he's no good.
There you go. 30 years.
So now 30 years on from this movie, how does it feel to you guys being so involved in the making of this when you hear somebody say that's the best Batman movie, not the best animated, the best Batman movie? Is that like a real mark, a badge of honor for you, having put so much work into it?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't. It's like I say, I don't want to sit around and argue with them,
right? This is the time to pat yourselves on the back.
I think Return of the Joker has better animation because TMS was more involved, and it's more consistent, and it was a really good film.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it will ever have the impact that Mask of the Phantasm had because it's the first time that we ever saw this on a big screen, and the story works so well, and what's really cool. What Alan did that was amazing to me was that he took that primal that integral part of the mythology, the bats coming out and inspiring him to become Batman. And he didn't make it like, oh, this is a cool moment. It's actually a really sad moment. It's like it's a profoundly affecting choice for him to become Batman. That you don't really think of that. You always want to make it cool, and it's like, no, it was a freaking tragedy that happened to him as a kid, and it's tragedy. It just keeps going.
Right.
He doesn't let up, and he was deprived of having an actual happy life. By becoming Batman.
The visual language multiple times in the film where it feels like the universe is like the black hand of the universe is just pulling him back down. The scene in front of the grave where he's begging his parents and then he looks up and you just see the lightning striking behind the Wayne name. Yeah. You're like, oh, it's like he's being like the universe is punishing him for trying to be happy.
Or when Alfred sees him puts on the costume for the first time and is like, you just see it's dread, but it's also sadness in his own right that oh my gosh, this is what's happened to this guy.
Yeah. So that has never, no other film actually captured that. They make it all like it's too cool. So isn't it neat that he does this? And it's like everything is like this pat. It's just no. It's actually really, really, really sad.
It's, like I know the most recent live action Batman, not the Flash, the actual last Batman, the Pattinson. They both shouted out this a lot.
I'm going to throw my computer across the room if you went on about the Flash.
No, thank you. Not on this episode anyway. But the Pattinson Batman film, they both mentioned Mask of the Phantasm as an inspiration, and also I feel like this was a movie where a lot of the other Batman films tend to maybe put more of the focus on the villains or a Harvey Dent or a Joker or whoever, because they're a little bit, they're charismatic and they're interesting characters. Whereas this Phantasm it's really the story of Bruce Wayne all the way through, from when we see him as a young man and all the way through to the end when he's, when everything's exploding and the Joker and Phantasm and everything's been revealed. So it's like, I feel like it was also brave to be like, no, this guy's interesting. We just have to, like you said, don't worry about trying to make it too like edgy and cool, and just like tell an honest romance about who this guy was and how he got that way.
Yeah. And also the one thing that one of my favorite characters is Alfred.
Yeah.
And how, just the script it just makes him, he's Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. in this movie. So perfect. It's so perfect. And it's like, and he's, in the way he talks to Bruce, it's like, and the people have always, I've gotten into arguments over this, but the dynamic is Bruce Wayne as a young man is deprived of a kid. He's raised by the butler. He's raised by, and everyone forgets, Alfred Pennyworth, they're creating all this weird shit now. Pardon my language, but he's a fighter pilot. He's a fighter pilot in the Battle of Britain all the way, and then he ends up with like the French underground, and he hooks up with Mademoiselle Marie, and this is the guy that is now the butler for the Waynes, and he has to raise this kid, and he does, and they're so it is Bruce Wayne's father. This is a lot of the combat knowledge, a lot of the first aid, a lot of all the just all the stuff that Batman needs to survive comes from Alfred. And it's like, and they had that one great line. It's like, you think you know everything about me, don't you? It's like, I heard your bottom.
It's such a teenager lashing out, like, like, you're not even my real dad. Like, I don't have to do what you say. Like, it's that.
It's just great, and he's trying to encourage. He wants Bruce to be happy,
right?
And I love the thing, just very simple visuals. He walks out with the tray, whoops, turns on.
I know, it's awesome. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
It's like, man, that was I think that was Frank Parr.
It was. It was. He did that martial arts scene and the romance thing.
And then he repeats it later on when when they reconnect. He walks in and he turns around and does it again.
And it's like, because I took martial arts. I remember Frank coming up and saying, he brought this board into me and he says, "So what do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, it looks good, And he's like, "No, I mean, is that legitimate?" And I'm like, "Yes, Frank." It is legitimate martial arts. It's like, just remember it's animation, so it's like, how real can you make it?
Right.
Like, no, that looks good, And he did that little foot thing where Andrea trips him up.
Yeah.
And then he grabs her with his feet, and it's like, it was like nice little sequence.
Oh, that's the other thing too, that they've clearly done it. In the film, it's like there's all that there, and then it's like she's wearing his shirt and it's and nothing else, and you're like, oh, and we don't have to get graphic about it. We don't have to get dirty about it. It's very it's very 40s style. Like anybody who has eyeballs knows.
Connect the dots. So one of the things that we talk about when we do reviews is we like to talk about the music, and this wasn't on the list of questions that we sent you guys, but can we talk a little bit, once you guys have done all this hard work, made this thing look beautiful, Shirley Walker, the GOAT, as we would say, the greatest of all time, comes in, and like, it's like that. If you ever see that, there's a meme where there's like a guy that's writing and it's like the paper's turning on fire when it's like the compositions that were done for this film, with everything, with the choir, I think the crescendo at the end of the end of the movie, and you get that and I think it's the beginning during the credits too. But that choir, like, can you guys talk about what it was like seeing her compositions with the stuff and how that either enhanced or just made it more incredible?
Well, makes you feel like, you walk up to the plate and you kind of bunt, and she's like, "Get out of the way!" Ow!
Exactly it. That's exactly it.
She. I mean, I've told this story a few times. I don't know if I told you guys, but like I remember it was Two-Face Part 1 had come back in, and we'd finished editing and all that. So there's a work print, and I get a phone call. Bruce comes in, he says, "Come on, we got to go over to the lot." And I'm like, "Why?" It's like, "Well, Shirley wants our opinion on something." Okay. We walk, so we go over to the lot, and the lot, Warner Brothers lot, especially then, was, it's a real movie lot. There's like guys on horseback going by. It's like Blazing Saddles.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. It's like guys in spacesuits and stuff are walking around. Anyway, so we go into the studio, and there's like, like a 35 to 60 piece orchestra. And Shirley's like, "Oh, good. Here, have a seat, and sit us down." It's like, and she turns her back and she, and goes, "Now, I just want your opinion on this." Okay. Tick, 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 boom. And then there's like a scene from Two-Face, and I'm watching it, and boom, 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 boom. And she turns around. "So, what did you think?" And me and Bruce are just sitting there with our mouths open. Like, it's great. No, you don't understand. You see, what I was trying to get here. It's like, I'm like, oh my God, it's like tears are rolling down your cheeks. It's so beautiful. And it's like, she's so friggin' good. It
really is extraordinary. And it was a singular moment in time when this could happen. I guess like Tiny Toon started this thing with the orchestras coming back, because that was not a thing that people did before. And it was like from the 40s, from the old, he wanted to do Tiny Toons like the old days, and so he brought the orchestras back. And so by the time Batman came along, they didn't know any other way to do a cartoon. Warner Brothers Animation, they're like, "Oh, this is what you do."
Right.
And thank God, because we got the best musician in the world to compose for us. And it was extraordinary. And you'd get that. They'd have the film on black and white reels behind the orchestra, and you'd like sync it up. You had the clicks. You'd see the footage for the shot, and then she would be conducting in front of a live orchestra. You'd see the footage, and it was amazing. They brought us in to watch a little bit of the scoring for the film, and it was. It was extraordinary. It was extraordinary, and the orchestra was even bigger for the feature than it was for the series. That was the one difference. Also, it was like they got more people to play, because they once it became a feature, they added a little bit more money to that stuff, because it's like, it's a feature.
Right.
Yeah, because like when the series started, and it's like, I've heard people like, "Well, of course it costs millions of dollars per episode," and the thing is like, no, Batman the Animated Series did not. We were locked down to $500,000 per episode, and that included the music and the voices.
Yep. Wow.
Warner Brothers was not, what they did. They hired very carefully, or let us have our way, and they didn't really interfere very much. Not the producers, not Gene McCurdy or Tom Ruger.
Mm-hmm.
They had their say. They had things that could concern them. But they understood that, it's like, in order to get a certain level of quality, they let you have your head, and they let you go. But we were locked at, like, some of the episodes, of course, I know that some of the other directors would perhaps spend more money, but the budgets were basically, some of the episodes maybe cost more, but we were like $500,000 an episode.
Yep.
And Mask of the Phantasm, and I think like probably $100,000 of that budget was just music.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it really paid off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It really paid off.
Yeah, we talk about it when we review the episodes, especially those Batman episodes. It's and honestly Superman, and but the so much of the composition and the stuff that Miss Walker did, and then with the people that she eventually passed the baton to.
Yep.
Those compositions create the character in a way. They give depth to a character. When you see the Joker and you hear the Joker theme, what to expect, even if it's played with different instruments or in different keys. It's the same thing with Batman, the crescendo. And we talk about when we were growing up playing with Batman figures, we're making the music when Batman comes in to fight, dun, 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 dun. Like, we're doing the Shirley Walker themes when we're playing with her. So growing up, the impact of that stuff, and then today, again, it just makes the work that you guys did stand out even further, and separates all those cartoons that were made in the 80s and 90s. There's very few of them that people can go back to today and look at and say, man, this holds up. And part of that, I think, is certainly the fact that the attention to detail and the love and the heart that was poured into the musical composition. It's just
Absolutely, especially when I first heard that Shirley told me that they were going to do the chorus thing, and I'm like, geez, I don't know if that's going to work.
Yeah.
And, I'm sold. The second,
and you do know what they're singing, right?
It's backward, isn't it? Latin backwards or something?
No, it's everyone's name backwards.
It's
right. Okay.
It's the crew list. It's the crew list backwards. It's a cast and crew, and like all of our names backwards.
So in there, Dan Riba backwards and Kevin Altieri somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. It sounds foreign. It was like some trick that she came up with for something. This is something that apparently she had come up with ages ago and was doing it whenever she had to have something sound Latin. She'd have people's names backwards.
Tremendous.
Love that. So moving forward, since this film, there's only been really a handful of times that the Phantasm character has popped back up, Andrea specifically, one being in an episode of Justice League Unlimited, of course, just kind of as a little cameo in the epilogue episode, and then more recently they brought her into the kind of the main continuity books and did a big 12-issue series with Catwoman and the Joker, and kind of sort of alluded to the Mask of the Phantasm, and then sort of took it in some different ways because of what the modern comics continuity is. But do you guys have any strong opinion one way or the other when that character pops up? Should we leave it well enough alone, or should we just bring in the professionals to take care of it?
You knew Kevin would.
You go first, Dan.
She was brought in an epilogue as sort of a catalyst to help Amanda Waller sort of create a new Batman. And I don't know. It's like we weren't the thing is, in hindsight, we were trying to throw everything in there, sort of a best of biggest hits of Batman kind of thing, to incorporate everything in there as much as we could. I don't know if it really should have been done. I think she could have hired anybody to do that. It's just I think they wanted a moment that was like, oh my gosh,
It's a little wink to people who knew.
It's a little wink, but I honestly kind of think, and because they weren't going to bring in Dana to do the voice, they weren't going to really it wasn't going to be a role. So it maybe was a waste. I think perhaps we could have gone a different direction on that. In hindsight, looking at it, it's like, oh, it's cool. It's cool because it connects to his past, but it's sort of like, I mean, the fact that she doesn't go through with it is great. But it also kind of implies well, has she been like an assassin going around now? Since why would this happen?
Exactly. No, it's like because that was my argument on it. Because I go number one, it's something I wasn't involved.
Sure.
But as soon as I see it happening, I'm going oh, come on, give me a break. Andrea Beaumont's only drive, and this is what separates her from Batman, is no, revenge.
Exactly.
Justice. This is what she feels is justice, especially for the Joker.
Right.
And the only reason the Phantasm exists is for her vendetta against all the guys that ruined their lives.
Mm-hmm. That costume was burned, destroyed. Yeah. That part of her life was gone forever. So the idea of like somebody bringing that back to her is unlikely, you know.
Yeah, and it's always like new creative heads or something wanting to own something. Like, for instance, in my opinion, Killing Joke is another one, right? Barbara Gordon is wounded by the Joker. She's shot in the belly by the Joker, and she's just in the way of him kidnapping her father. Mm-hmm. You know, and then he's in the hospital, and it's like, Bruce, he's nuts. He's more nuts than ever, you know. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have to be Oracle. She can heal and become Batgirl again, or Batwoman, or whatever. Right. It's like, why? It's like, oh no, now someone at DC is like, I own this. And now it's like wheelchair ridden, and then there's another Batgirl. It's like, and Bruce Wayne is constantly adopting a new Robin. It's like, how many kids do you need, man? Like, well, this one got killed. Oh, I guess I'll get another one. It's like, oh, for God's sake!
I mean, at least the one that's his son for real is like, okay. Yeah. Okay. I kind of get that, you know. It's like it's his kid, but you'd think you'd want to keep him away from the cape, and you know,
doesn't have a high success rate of keeping them safe.
Maybe at least till they have a driver's license, you know.
But then again, it's like, why does he have to be Robin?
Right.
Well,
exactly.
Robin was Dick Grayson's creation, and Robin in the Batman the Animated Series, I think, is, you know, that's his kid. Mm-hmm. You know, he raised him from a young man, but even as a young man, he was quite accomplished in acrobats and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But he basically creates Robin Hood, which is something a kid would do, and he hangs on to it. And because in the Batman the Animated Series, he's now college age, going to school. He's like, what would you say, Dan? Maybe 19. Yeah, you know, 19, 20, and buff. Yeah. He's an athletic, buff kid. He's built like Chris Hemsworth or someone.
Right. Well, I always thought him as more of like a Bruce Lee type. That was the thing. It's like I saw him as athletic, like more acrobatic and that kind of thing. Like one of those Olympic those acrobatic, you know, guys. More than a muscle builder.
And more than Batman, the thing about, and Lauren Lester, I think he'd back me up on this, but Robin likes to fight.
Yeah.
He likes fighting. It's like he's into it. Like he enjoys going up against bad odds and stuff. And he also fights dirty.
Very dirty.
You know,
not afraid of punching out below the belt.
Showdown, it's like, you know, and he uses like he just, hey, here's a couple of fish.
Yep.
Nunchucks.
Cracking boxes over
people. A couple of frozen fish, you know.
That's right. Well, that's fantastic. As we begin to wind down, we got a couple more questions for you guys, but we'll begin to wind down here. So looking at this film, we've talked about how incredible it was. We know that there were talks of doing later, and there was another direct-to-video that I know Bruce was not involved with, the Sub-Zero movie, the Mr. Freeze movie.
No, but Randy and Boyd.
Okay, that's right.
So there were a lot, like Cheng Yi did designs. There were a lot of people that worked on the show that were on it. So it's not like it was away from.
It wasn't,
but it wasn't a Bruce and Eric thing. No.
Gotcha.
But the thing that I disagreed with about that is like, and something that I had a big hand in, Nora Freeze being, you know, Mr. Freeze as Dr. Phibes was my take on it. And, you know, Carolyn Monroe only existed in the movies as like, you know, Phibes' preserved wife. So that's how, but Nora Freeze, you know, she's dead.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, it's like, what's his name? The Walt Disney guy.
Oh.
Yeah. He's sitting there holding it over his head that, you know, he's going to resurrect her. And it's like, he's lying.
Yeah.
You know, it's like so bringing her back is like a superhero character.
I was going to say it felt almost like undoing the tragedy of the Mr. Freeze
that's a
character
thing.
in Heart of Ice too,
saying,
right?
Dan could speak to this because then when they did bring the character back for the New Adventures season, you kind of had to create a whole new tragedy for Mr. Freeze to motivate him.
Right. And it was one of those things that it was when we did the holiday special.
Mm-hmm.
And the one story that Glenn did where Mr. Freeze is like trying to create a permanent Christmas thing. He wants the snow because she wanted a white Christmas, and it's in honor of his dead wife.
Yes.
And when we did our adaptation of Holiday Nights, yes, we only had so much time to adapt things, and there was only so much. But one of the reasons we didn't choose that one was because Sub-Zero sort of like negated that story, and we kind of. It's still canon, you know. It's like we can't just ignore.
I can.
Yeah, but then again, we cut off Mr. Freeze's head, and that's canon. So
right,
it's
just a guy in a jar eventually, and beyond.
So let me ask you: do you guys recall any discussion of a direct sequel or follow-up, whether it be an episode or a full-length movie, to what was done in Phantasm that would have continued the story at all?
No. I mean, there was this was like, again, I said that this was the Batman the Animated Series prequel.
Yeah, exactly.
It was our Batman Year One.
Yep.
This is how Bruce Wayne came to be. You know, this is what happened. Andrea Beaumont was a big part of what made him into Batman. If she didn't skip off to Europe with her father, it's not a mistake that he's like, after all the bats fly up out of the cave, he finds that there's this cave system below the mansion that he never knew about, and he's coming up on a ladder when he gets the note.
Right.
You know, it's
like everything is leading towards him being Batman, and that marriage would have like put the kibosh on that.
Although they might have been a crime-fighting team.
Yes. Yeah,
she's got the skills.
Bonus question: If the only thing that separates the Phantasm from Batman is the pursuit of vengeance, but Batman declares he is vengeance, is there some sort of
is Bruce a hypocrite? Is Batman a hypocrite?
No, because as Batman, it's like the movie that originally that Bruce Wayne and his parents take him to is The Mark of Zorro.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he plays the fop, not the fop, but a playboy, something that he actually is not.
Mm-hmm.
And when he goes and he says, "I am vengeance, I am the night," he's actually saying that to someone.
Exactly.
He dons the Batman guise to be scary. You know, it's like the cape is not just, you know, it's scary. It obscures. It's like, so that the weapons and things he pulls out, it's like magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like pockets and things. There's things in the belt. There's pockets, different places where it's hidden. But, you know, no one knows. You know, no one knows what's going to happen.
Right.
The criminal. So when he says, "I am vengeance, I am the night," it's like, well, not only does that sound good, but he's putting it on. He's scared.
Exactly.
Especially in that episode, because he's going up against the Scarecrow, who's in
exactly. So I'm scarier than you.
Right.
You know, I don't get scared. I make things scary. You know, I scare others. You know.
I love that.
And maybe it's just a quick final aside. Obviously, we do your best not to mention the late Kevin Conroy, of course, as the voice of Batman. I just had a quick question. We spoke a little bit with Kevin last year, a little bit earlier this year when we had him on to discuss Bane. But do you guys remember just like the first time you heard him do the voice, and like what was that feeling like, and how does that, you know, and just a little bit about your personal relationships with Kevin?
Like last time I saw him was at the Garden State Comic Con. At Garden State, it was at the Meadowlands, East Coast Comic Con. And they had a panel, and I hadn't seen him in like, I don't know, 7-8 years. I don't know. And the thing about him, and not saying I'm unique, but I'm sitting there doing a sketch for someone. I'm a drawing of the booth.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just look down, there's like these 2 feet, and I look up, and there's Kevin Conroy, and he goes, "Hey, Kevin. Hey, Kevin." It's like, give me a hug. And he was like that every time you saw him.
Yeah.
He was your best friend.
Yeah, exactly.
And he wanted you to feel that way. And it's like, I don't think you could even piss him off.
No.
And I'm really, it does. In the first time I met him, at the recording, I walk up and I'm like, Michael Keaton's pretty good, but my God, this guy is friggin' Batman.
No kidding.
He was lantern-jawed, handsome, broad-shouldered. Hey, like he looked like.
Yep.
I'm like, why isn't this guy Batman?
Yeah, exactly. He was athletic and everything. He kind of had skinny legs, but other than that, they were in good shape. He was, but he was just like, oh my gosh, he was, man. He was Batman. You could totally see the mask on him. It was like,
a friend of ours who actually worked on the Adventures Continue comic, Jordan Gibson, did a sketch of Kevin in the bat suit with just kind of like the shadow of the cowl across his face. It's like, why didn't that guy get, why didn't that guy's phone ring in,
Right.
Well, but he ended up being Batman, and like the whole thing. It's like, I'm sorry that very few people out there got to see him perform.
Yep.
Because one of the most fun. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
No, you go ahead and say it. You started it. Well, I know where you're going, but
I just was sitting there like on Harlequinade, just seeing him, Mark Hamill, and Arlene Sorkin interacting in the booth together was like a once in a lifetime thing. It's like, I can't even describe it, because it's like you see the cartoon, and it's pretty funny. It's like, it's pretty funny, but it's like seeing Arlene playing Harley, like where she goes, it's like she's actually performing to Kevin Conroy.
Exactly.
And he's like, you don't see it, you don't do anything, you don't touch anything unless I tell you. You got it? And she's like, yes, sir. That's the thing. What we did in the cartoon is what they did with each other.
That is exactly the thing. And that's the beauty. That was the strength of Andrea Romano as well as director. She knew that these people had to be in the room to get the right performances. If they don't bounce off of each other, there's something false. There's something, and that's one of the things that kind of bugs me about the way features are done, because everybody's voice is recorded a million ways so that they can have all the control in the world in case they change their mind or the story or this and that.
Right.
And they're not literally talking to each other. It's fake. And we were actually able to get real performances out of people, and they were genuinely bouncing off of each other.
And I wish you could have seen, you could have seen the look that Kevin Conroy gave Hart Bachner. A friend in need. Arthur, where you can stick it. It's like it is performance amongst actors.
Yeah.
And and it's like Andrea, Ginny McSwain would also do that. Insisted. I worked with her. Other than Andrea, those are the only ones that bring all the actors in.
Yeah.
No, all of them in, and like, there's such value in just acting off of each other.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's like the first day of acting school note, right? It's reacting. It's
exactly
hearing what the other person says, and then you respond to that, as opposed to just say it 15 ways and we'll pick one.
Yeah, no, it's and it's one of those things where Andrea would like get up at like 4 in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, and go over a script, scrupulously making all these notes and get ready for a record. She would sit down with the actors before you do a table read, where she would like this is your motivation. This is what's happening on the screen. And they would know absolutely everything they needed to know going into the record.
Yeah.
And so it was like her preparation just like made that stuff sing. It was extraordinary.
And she'd call you up too. It's like if she had a question. I don't know what she did.
Oh, exactly. All the time.
Yeah. I think she did it with me and Dan. I don't know about the other directors. But
yeah, because you're always like, then every now and then you go, oh shoot, there's a helicopter. They need to be yelling. It's like, you know, and it's, there's this going on, and but there was always like, and then she'd always like, how close are they? How they get the volume and the intensity, because you just kind of like have to get that. And my thing was always, for coverage, because if someone falls off a cliff, you don't know how high the cliff is. You don't know exactly. Right. You have the thing in your mind about but it's like I always ask for like 3 yells to get like different lengths, so that it's like we know how far a person is going to fall.
I love that. That's tremendous. That attention to detail. Another thing we talk about. We sing the praises of Andrea Romano whenever we possibly can. Just
absolutely
the voice acting and the performances.
And in this film in particular, like Kevin, like gave it his all. He, those shots of him talking to his parents' grave were particularly resonant to him. He really broke down apparently, and Andrea had to console him. Because he really, like, it's him.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is he pulled it out of himself,
Yeah. It is the performance of the. Yeah. I mean, you can go back and watch that scene, and when he talks about not expecting to be happy, and he's really just like begging for some release from this burden that he's carrying, and there's just nothing, and then the lightning strike. It's just get chills every time thinking about it.
And when you find out about his real life history and what happened, it's like, oh my gosh, it totally resonated with
So glad he got to write that story for the DC Pride comic book a couple of years ago, just talking about how his own personal life had informed being able to go to that dark place and how it, created that magic in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both for sharing those thoughts.
Thank you so much.
We know the I'm sure it's not easy losing a friend like that and talking about them, but that's really incredible for us to hear and really cements that legacy of, I mean, we already knew that from everything else everyone says that Kevin was an incredible human.
And I don't know much about, like, I knew he had cancer, but I didn't really know how sick he really was. But I wonder, because in New York, 9/11, he was right there.
Yep.
He was front line, serving food to all the guys that are diving into like the asbestos cloud.
Well, his brother is a fireman who he didn't die, but he felt a connection to all those that did, and that's his city, and he had to go back and do something. So he really just like a real hero.
Yeah, he really was. It's like, and it's like, he was just serving food and stuff, but he was doing it right there. Like the guys would come out covered with dust and crap, and there's Batman serving you food.
Can you imagine?
You know the story, right? About how
I think we've heard it. I think it exists somewhere online, but I'd love to hear you tell it.
Please tell us. Yeah, please regale us.
Well, initially he didn't let people know. He was just trying to do this anonymously, and then somebody came up to him and said, I've heard that voice before. Are you Batman? Are you Kevin Conroy? And he said, yeah. And then he's like, holy crap. And so he goes like, who's been serving us breakfast? It's Batman. And in the back, someone's like, yeah. The language. You're sure, prove it. and so from the back, because he's like in a different area, he's like, I am the night. I am vengeance. I am Batman. Holy shit. It is Batman. And they all cheered. And it just, he died because it was like, oh my gosh, this is
that's tremendous.
And then it was like, it all just gave them this lift and this laugh, and they hadn't laughed, this was like the first week, and nobody had a laugh since it happened, and he just kind of felt like, you know what, where it loosened things up and it made people sort of like, you know, warm up.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was like he was in the right place.
There you go. Because we go like
just like, you know, and then that you know, that's kind of what he was. It's like, do the right thing.
Yeah.
Don't do the safe thing. Don't do the right thing. And it's like, and I don't know. Well, you see, and I don't even know how much of an effect that had on, you know, how sick he became.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't have changed it.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have changed it even if he knew.
Yep.
You know, that's who he was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you again for both sharing those stories.
Thank you.
Tremendous. I guess wrapping things up. So final question for you guys here. In your own words, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the legacy of Mask of the Phantasm.
I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
Well, I mean, back in the day, it was a failure.
Yeah.
In the day, the movie came out on Christmas Day and nobody went to see it. So we all kind of were like, well, you know, we gave it our best shot. What can you do? Nobody saw us. And we kind of let it go. And then when it came out on video, Siskel and Ebert reviewed it and went, holy crap, this is the best Batman movie that's ever been made.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, where were you guys then?
They apologized.
They did. They apologized.
They apologized. Like, I am sorry, I did not see this in the theaters.
Wow.
You know, and
those guys could be picky about animation. They were like, they would always like nitpick bad cartoons or bad, you know, even Disney films. They'd like nitpick things. They're like, oh, Sleeping Beauty, the animation isn't, you know, like what the, you know, none of that.
Was Siskel or Ebert actually when they reviewed My Neighbor Totoro, and he went and said, he did go and say, like, you know, it's like, oh well, you know, it's got this Japanese look to it, and like, and then the other, I think it was Ebert goes,
Ebert
like,
loved it.
Wait a second, did you take your kids with you?
Yeah, exactly.
What did they think? Oh, right. They loved it. Exactly.
Right. And he recanted that later on. He realized he made a mistake. He didn't know where, you know, he didn't know. but they both, the fact that both of them agreed that it was a great film was like it was like a boost.
Yeah.
And then it was like, it ended up living forever, you know. It just like it was one of these things where on video it thrived.
Yeah. And the one thing that I'll say about people about seeing in the theater, and I don't know, I mean, I was at one screening with Alan Burnett recently, Fountain City Con, and I don't know if it was digital or what, but the thing is like when that movie came out and it was on film stock, it's the same as seeing the Fantasia in the 70s when they re-released it, because it's the original negative prints, you know, and it's like that film stock, that sound, it fills the theater.
Yep.
And that was something that really, seeing it in the theater makes it different than seeing it at home. Yep. Although I will say this, I have the Laserdisc.
Ooh.
The Laserdisc does it.
Wow.
The Laserdisc, you know, you put it through the receiver and it comes out through the old style speakers.
Yeah.
And it like rolls around, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how where Warner Brothers was back in the day.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for taking so much time with us this afternoon and talking about this masterpiece that you both worked on and sharing stories and thoughts and you know, being in this roundtable. You know, so it was cool just to sit back and hear you guys share stories.
That was basically our plan, which is we'll give you like the minimal prompt and then just say go and let you guys chat it up, because that's what we want as fans, and I know our listeners will appreciate it too.
You guys want to plug any social media? Kevin, I saw you've been active recently, posting artwork on there. You're hit and miss. You come back here and there, but saw you've been posting your sketches.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really, I don't know, I don't have any plans right now, but it's like I really enjoyed doing that episode with Paul and Alan, and hopefully I'll be doing more comics with those guys. I like I said, earlier, it's like I'm just like, God, it's like I wanted to do the Ra's al Ghul Talia one. I really wanted to draw that. Ty Templeton's doing a great job.
He's doing good. Yeah, I'm glad he's healthy.
Yes. Yeah, and he's better than ever.
Yeah, he's really phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's like, and I've been doing like the comic convention circuit. Wasn't really planning on it, but it's like I was, the Heroic Fine Arts, James Fletcher's, the gallery there. It's like they're really, it's really good events.
Yeah.
And
I got to get hooked up with that. Yeah. I'm doing a thing with CGC. They're doing an event for me, so I'm doing a bunch of cover commissions.
Oh, very cool.
No, it's like
I was in DC, but
we can go. But we can. I mean, DC's an hour away, so it's not that difficult. And most of the time, people will go to DC before they come to Baltimore because it's like we're gonna get the full.
I grew up in Arlington, Virginia, and then my dad worked in DC, so I just and my kids going to college in Charlotte, so we took a drive up there. And
very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you both again for joining us. We'll be on the lookout for all that stuff, and we look forward to having you both on again to talk more Batman cartoons and DCAU and all that. But thank you both for sharing your afternoon with us.
No problem. Yeah. My pleasure.
Yeah, he said it right. That's what I say. Yes. My pleasure. And it will be fun.
And it was really entertaining to have Dan along, because it's like
I was going to say, how many interviews have you guys done together over the years?
Almost none.
No, not too many. Yeah.
You exclusive.
I was going to say.
No, it's true. Like we talk amongst ourselves, but I don't think we've done one of these officially anywhere.
No, we were on stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
At a San Diego con about 4 years ago.
Yep.
Yumi and Gogan.
Yep.
And I had
it seemed like Frank in the audience going, "Oh, Frank should be up here."
And Brad.
And Brad. I'm like, "Oh, for crying out loud!" There's a lot of people here that but there's always so much room.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks for allowing us to be one of the first, if not the first, podcast to have you guys on together.
Yeah, this is awesome.
It was a joy, and we'll look for other topics, maybe to have you guys on together again in the future to share some more stories.
Cool. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Wow. So that's way up there, Cal, as we begin to wrap it up. Thank you again to Dan and Kevin for spending so much time with us and giving us so much insight into the making of that film. As we talked about, and as we will continue to talk about, it's one of the seminal pieces of this whole animated universe that makes it fun to go back and talk about and to hear how much joy and passion they still have for their work some 30 years on. It's just incredible, and to hear those two guys talk for so long was such a pleasure, and one of those sort of pinch yourself, can't believe this is happening when we were able to set it up. So thanks again to both Kevin and Dan for making the time to be with us and for sharing and being so open about their time working on the film.
Hearing behind the scenes stuff, sequences that were cut, even things that they decided to eliminate for keeping that PG rating. You love hearing all of that stuff that you probably would never know or hear about unless you heard it directly from the source. So just a wealth of knowledge from the two of them, and we look forward to getting them both back on the program at some point. But special thanks to both of them for spending an afternoon with us, pretty much, and allowing us to pick their brains and nerd out with them.
Absolutely. It was so much fun. And as we begin to wrap it up, just want to thank everybody for listening. This is our next to last year, so we'll do the big year-end thanks at the end. But thanks everybody for listening. This has been a really fun month to put together, And whether you do so on Apple Podcasts or RIP Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any of the other third-party sites, or of course, if you're listening on youtube.com/thepodtower, where not only you get our shows, but shows from Jump on the Bat-Wagon, as well as the whole archive of Tim Talk and some live stream archives as well. A lot of great content up there. Love being a part of the Pod Tower YouTube as well. So however you listen to us, we appreciate it. Just listening to the show or watching on YouTube is a great way to support the show. If you'd like to support us a bit more directly, there are a few ways to do that. They're actually listed in the show notes. There's a donate button, which a few people do a monthly donation to us, buy us a cup of coffee, help us power on through, especially Cal when he's editing these shows late at night, trying to get them up for Saturday mornings. And we always appreciate those who do that. And of course, there's also our store, where you could buy yourself a shirt or a mug or a hat or something, or a sticker. We appreciate anybody who supports us. And a great free way, in fact, to support us is, of course, to leave us a 5-star review on your podcast catcher of choice. Seems like Apple's the main one that lets you post reviews. I know you can give 5 stars on Spotify as well, but if you leave a 5-star review, we'll read it on the show, and we'll actually send you a little gift if you're within the continental U.S. But it's been a fun year. We when everybody was posting their Spotify Wrapped, we got tagged quite a few times for people saying we're one of their top podcasts of the year. So thanks to everybody who's listened, especially I imagine this one will have a few extra listens. So thanks to everybody for listening. And Cal, this is a 5 Saturday month. But instead of a trip around the Elseworlds, we're going to do something a little bit different, because it is, after all, Aqua Phantasm month, and we got to go out with one more theme appropriate episode. Although it won't be a traditional review coming up next week.
That is right, Liam. So it is the holiday season, and we do tend to want to take a little bit of rest and family time, although we are still in very much the giving spirit when it comes to the holidays. So don't worry, we're not skipping a week and leaving you without content to stream if you need an excuse to get away from some family or something like that. But instead of covering an episode of one of the DCAU shows, instead of doing an Elseworld, as you mentioned, we're going to do a bonus episode, but for the very first time, a specific issue of the Batman and Robin Adventures. And on theme, as you mentioned, the Batman and Robin Adventures annual #1, which came out in November of 1996, written by Paul Dini, a name we would certainly recognize, penciled by Ty Templeton, another name we'll likely recognize, with a few other. Mike Parobeck also worked on it, the legend. Dev Madden also, and Brandon Cruz also worked on this particular comic issue. But why it's so important is, and pertinent for us to cover, is that it is sort of a direct sequel to the Batman Mask of the Phantasm movie. It involves plenty of callbacks, references, and additional things to sort of follow up on a couple of the threads from the movie. So looking forward, Liam, to discussing this. It's been quite a while since I have read this issue. We definitely had this when we were growing up, but I'm excited to look back on this and just sort of review and talk about the issue itself, some of the artwork, and our memories of reading this when we were kids, as well as some of the things that kind of tie it together with the Batman Mask of the Phantasm movie. It's going to be awesome.
Absolutely, Cal. Can't wait to revisit that. Like you said, we haven't done many retro DCAU comic reviews, so excited to break into the back catalog there. Going to be a fun one to end the year on. But until then, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of the DCAU Review.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.